Hi guys, we are going to look at a CMBL file and a movie file today. We're going to use these to collect data about motion instead of using our motion detectors or our photo gates. So the first thing I did to make sure that this works is I downloaded the CMBL file that was shared with me and the movie file that corresponds to it. And you can see that I put these on a computer in the same folder. So before you do anything, you guys are going to need to do that. Once you have these two files in the same folder, I'm just going to double click on the CMBL file, and that's going to open up the movie file within the CMBL file. So you can see over here, I have a movie file of the Apollo 16 mission, and then I have some data tables and some graphs where my data is going to go. So we're going to talk today about how you can use Logger Pro to gather data using videos. Now, the first thing I'm going to do in my data gathering journey is to make this movie as large as I can on the screen. It's going to make this easier for me to pick out specific points in the movie rather than looking at something really small. The next thing I need to do is tell Logger Pro the scale of this movie. Now you need to remember that Logger Pro can't actually see the movie. It just sees what you tell it. So the first thing I need to tell it is how big this astronaut is right here on the screen. And you can see if we play this movie, just hit play, we have a movie of an astronaut jumping. I'm going to bring this back to the beginning by clicking the beginning button. And you can see the other thing I can do is step through this movie one screen at a time. Now, I want to point out a few things that happen as you're stepping through the movie. The first thing is up at the top. It's going to tell you how many slides or how many screens are in this movie, and it's going to tell you which one you're on. It's also going to tell you how much time is going by right over here. You can see that it looks like, as I step through, if I look at the time, each screen is 0.1 seconds. And so by the time I go through all 18 screens, I've had 1.8 seconds go by. So I'm going to again get back to the beginning. Now, you can also see that at the first slide here, there's a lot of information, but it's probably not the best slide to collect data for because there's all this stuff on top of my picture. So I'm just going to step forward to right here for the first slide where I can see the entire picture. Now, what I'm going to need to do is tell Logger Pro how tall something is in this frame, only because Logger Pro can't see things in the frame and it doesn't know what's in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over to all the information I have right over here, and I'm going to use this Set Scale button. And you can see if you put your mouse over and just leave it for any of these buttons, it's going to tell you what the button does. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click Set Scale. I'm going to come over here to my astronaut. And it ends up that an astronaut with all of his gear on and his big tall shoes is going to end up being about 2 meters tall. So what I need to do is just let Logger Pro know that a length that's about this long on the screen corresponds to 2 meters of length. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now Logger Pro knows that 2 meters is that long on the screen. The other thing I want to do is I want to tell Logger Pro where the origin is that I'm going to be measuring things around. Remember we talked about having a frame of reference? The origin is your frame of reference, and you can really put the origin anywhere on this astronaut. So if I click the Set Origin button, let's say I wanted to measure the movement of the backpack of the astronaut. I could set the origin right here. Let's say I wanted to measure the movement of the foot of the astronaut. I could set the origin right here. I'm really just going to pick what it is I'm measuring and let Logger Pro know that I want this point right here to be 0. That is my 0 position. And I think I'm going to measure from the top of the astronaut's backpack. So I'm going to set the origin there. The next thing I want to do is I want to start telling Logger Pro where the astronaut is at different times. And to do that, I'm going to come over here to this Add Point button. So if I click on this, it's going to give me a crosshair, and I'm going to tell Logger Pro where the astronaut is at different times. Do you see it started out there, and now he's bending his knees. He went down a little bit. The astronaut's right there. He's coming back up. And now he's starting to actually jump. And you can see that I'm just going to keep checking where that astronaut's backpack is, and I'm just going to click right at the same point on the astronaut's backpack again and again and again and again and again and again. And so you could see that every time I clicked, the screen advanced by 1/10 of a second. And so what I've done is I've gathered data for the position of the astronaut as time went on. Now that I have that data, what I can do is come up here and change my add point tool just to an arrow tool so I don't accidentally click and add points in here somewhere because all my data is collected. And I can make this window small again because I'm done my data collection. And you can see now that I have position and time data. This is how far in the X direction the astronaut moved, which is clearly not much because he wasn't moving back and forth in the X direction. He was really just moving up and down. And so what we really care about is what's going on in the Y direction right here. You can see that the astronaut was going up and down in the Y direction. That also means, because I know the Y position and I know how much time went by, that Logger Pro can calculate how fast he was moving at those times as well. So if you look right here, I have a graph of Y position and time, but it looks like there's nothing on here. The problem is, if you look at the scale, we're looking at from 2 meters to 3 meters, and the astronaut never got 2 meters above zero. So really the problem is I don't have this scaled right in order to see my data. Now, one of the things that's going to make your life a little easier is if you just use this auto scale tool. If I go ahead and click auto scale, do you see it just makes the data fill this graph right here? So now that the data has filled that graph, you can see that I have this nice parabola that I would expect as the astronaut goes up and slows down to a velocity of 0, and then speeds up as he's going down in the negative direction. So I have that parabola that I would expect for an accelerating object. And I can look at this in other ways as well. I can come over here and I can choose different things to see. Maybe I want to talk about not so much the position of the astronaut in the Y direction, but I want to talk about how fast he was going, his velocity in the Y direction. I can just change to velocity, but look again, now this looks kind of confusing. It's confusing because it's not scaled correctly. So again, I'm just going to click the auto scale button and it's going to rescale it for me. Now, doesn't it make sense that at the beginning when he's bending his knees, we get this strange little spike, but then when he's just under the influence of gravity, I get basically a straight line where he starts out with a large positive velocity. It slows down as he rises up to a velocity of 0. Then he speeds up in the negative direction as he's falling back down. So this is everything you need in order to analyze the motion of our astronaut right here. Remember, you can go back and forth between Y position and Y velocity. Make sure that you use the scale on those graphs so you really can see a nice picture of your data. Okay, guys, go ahead to your Google Doc and start answering questions and clicking on data points. Bye.